Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Astrology Hub Podcast. I am so happy that you're here. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Today, we're going to continue exploring the realm of astrological magic, going deeper this week with fixed stars, decans, the minor arcana, and the tarot. So much to explore: planetary hours, magical elections. And if you haven't heard yet, October is Magic Month here at Astrology Hub. And what we're really doing is exploring the ways that we can re-enchant our everyday lives, how we can reconnect with the sense of magic and wonder that, I don't know about you, but I certainly experienced as a child, absolutely lost for a long period of time. But then astrology brought back into my life. So we're wanting to share that magic with you and help you explore ways that you can bring it into your life in very practical, tangible ways. There's a lot of things to be disillusioned about in the world today. And so we would like to bring that element of hope and vision and play back into our lives. All right. So as part of Magic Month, we are exploring this theme of astrological magic in the various faces of it here on the podcast every week. We are also featuring a sale of 33% off all of our astrological magic classes. And that's featuring teachers like Jen Zart, Rachel Lang, and our guest here today, Gary Caton. And we're having a costume contest. So for any of you who have an astrologically themed costume that you would like to submit for our contest, you can just take a picture of yourself in your astrologically themed costume, send it in, and then be eligible to win. There's going to be 3 winners. We're going to have a People's Choice Award. We're going to vote as a team. And so we're going to have some amazing prizes. You can win a membership. You can win some of these astrological classes. So be thinking about ways you can bring the astrology to life in costume. Okay.
Wow.
You can go. I know. Isn't that fun, Gary? You can go to astrologyhub.com/magic to submit your photo for the contest and learn more all about Astrology Hub's Magic Month, the different courses we have on sale, etc. So today's guest is Gary P. Caton, who's a transdisciplinary Hermetic practitioner integrating diverse traditions, art forms, and practices for over 30 years. He was initiated in astrologer by a magnificent dream in 1993. He's since become an accomplished counselor, writer, podcaster, teacher, photographer, and mage. He is a true modern wizard, and I'm so happy to have Gary back here on the podcast.
Thank you, Amanda. It's wonderful to be back. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I've been doing in preparation for Magic Month is rewatching our astrological magic classes. And you said something in one of your classes that just went bam. I love how you just said this. What you said is that we can sanctify time, re-enchant it, make it sacred again. So I'd love to start with that quote, Gary, and just ask you, what is magic to you?
Yeah. I think it's important to point out that before I was an astrologer, I was studying architecture at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is an engineering school, so that was very math focused. And I just realized at some point I can't do this, And in trying to figure out what I did want to do, I realized the thing I wanted was magic. That word, that was the thing I needed to find. And it's kind of like what you were talking about, like when you're a kid and you have that natural sense of the magic of the world. I mean, I remember just being eyes wide open and being completely amazed at the world. And then, it's like, blah, 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 stuff happens, life happens. And I wanted that re-enchantment. And so I set out on a journey of an alchemical journey, really. In hindsight, I didn't know anything about any of the Hermetic arts. But I went looking for magic and I found astrology. And then it was only later that I learned that astrology is one of 3 Hermetic arts, which include magic and alchemy. And so I started to broaden my my knowledge base and my experience base with alchemy practices and with magic practices. And this has really made a huge difference in my career and being able to carry on because, I was in the early vanguard of people who were making their living on the internet as astrologers, and it was not easy. It's, social media and stuff made it easier. And, now that there's a whole new generation, that's a huge influx of people and it's a lot more popular, but the magic and the alchemy definitely helped me to stay active and just survive and just keep going for as long as I have. It would have been really easy to just fade out at some point, because it's challenging. So I think if I were to say, to answer your question, I think that magic it's a way of reconnecting with the fundamental life force of the universe. It really reanimates you, your being, your soul. It brings a soulful energy to your being, to your consciousness, to your life. And that's when magic is happening. You feel more alive. And it's that energy that keeps us going through the hard times, And so it's kind of like it's a way you could think of it as a way of recharging your batteries, if you will. Um, you could, when I'm out stargazing, and it's taken me a long time, I've been an avid stargazer for, let's see, 16 years. And it's only recently begun to occur to me that when I'm out there, and I'm watching the sunrise and I think about, I remember when you did a magic ritual back with the sunrise. Do you remember that? It was
Yes.
it was our soul work, our home, the homework. I was so impressed that the CEO of this, I think that was the first time we worked together, actually. It might have
Uh-huh.
been. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, wow, she did her homework and she did it so well. I was like, yes, that was so cool. I remember you went out, you saw the eye in the sun, right? Remember that?
Yes. Yes.
Incredible. And so, and that goes like there's this whole mythology of the sun god Atum, Ra, and this eye that he sends out looking for his children and at the beginning of the universe.
Wow.
And so when I'm out, I've had experiences when I'm out watching a sunrise, particularly like when I was in North Carolina and like in some wilderness area and there's literally no humans or even a sign of a human. It's easy to think to yourself, like, what day is it? Like, it's the first day. Like, this is the moment of creation happening again. Like this is the process of the world being born again.
Wow.
Each day at sunrise, there's this magical creative act that we can participate in. And the more that I realized, like, for instance, when I became an astrologer, one of the ways that I figured out what the heck was going on in my dream is I got this book called an ephemeris. It's a bunch of tables of planetary positions, like pre-computers, right? Where you had to get it in a book because you didn't have it on a website or anything, right? And for the first ephemerides, the first tables of planetary positions, it took 30 generations of day after day after day of humans walking up these ziggurats, these sky temples, observing, recording 30 generations of that. And that act of observing and encoding the heavens and figuring it out, that stands really at the beginning of time as we know it. Like that's the beginning of civilization. And so when we go out and we participate in a similar ritual, we're participating in something that goes back to the beginning of time. So it's almost like time travel, but I would actually say that it's even more profound than that. And wow, Gary, what's more profound than time travel? Well, going back to the beginning, if we go back to the beginning, even symbolically, if we're participating in something that happened at the beginning, we're participating in beginning as a thing, like the force of beginning, the force of origin, the force of primordial origin the Big Bang, or whatever you want to call it, like we're participating in this original energy of our art. And I really, when I look back, I think like that's the only way I can explain the incredible things that have happened to me is that essentially stargazing is like ritual magic. It's a ritual for sure. And there's a magical quality to it that enhances your consciousness, it enhances your soul, it enhances your physical vitality. So that's that's a
I mean,
lot
this is the
for an
thing. This is
answer,
the thing
but
that I'm noticing. But I love it, Gary, because I've been immersing myself in our astrological magic classes, and I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing Jen Zart, and I'm hearing Rachel Link speak about magic, and then I contrast it to the very superficial understanding of magic that most of us carry or
mm,
get exposed to. That it's some like you're doing spells and there's wands and there's
there's that,
there can be that, but what I'm really getting from all of you is it is a reconnection with soul. It's your soul. It's the soul of the universe. It's the soul of life itself. And
yes.
there's something so profound about that communion. It's such a
Mm,
it's first of all, what you're saying is you're tuning into the creative force itself. You're tuning into and communing with all of life, with the
yeah.
source of life. And what I love about it too is what I'm getting is like it can be very simple. Like you said, stargazing. And to me,
Watch a sunrise.
yeah, that's what all that means right now. In this moment in my time, in this moment in my life, it's paying attention to the sunrise, paying attention to the sunset, having that moment of connection of just like, oh, okay, wow, this is a new beginning, or this is an ending. And can I give thanks and gratitude, and can I just
Yes.
absorb the amazingness of this light that is
Yes.
here and emanating all of life, right? But
Mm, mm,
we can get super complex with it. We can keep it really simple. We can keep, and that's beautiful. I love that range
yeah.
that we all have to explore. So thank you for sharing it in a way that helps us feel
Yeah.
what it's done for your life and how it enriches your days, because that's what I really hope we convey to our community throughout Magic Month. Is like,
Yeah.
this is more than getting what you want. This is more than manifesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is like actually re-enchanting every aspect of your day-to-day life.
Yeah. I mean, there's times when I'm out stargazing or watching a sunrise. I mean, I'm literally moved to tears, and it's that capacity for awe and wonder, I think, that defines magic. And yeah, you can use it to get things that you need. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that, assuming that it doesn't violate anyone else's rights or, there's an important thing to mention there that I think gets taken for granted a lot of times, even something seemingly benevolent, like a love spell. Well, are you really sure that the person you're trying to get attracted to you is also wanting to be attracted? Like there needs to be consent.
I'm really glad you bring this up, Gary, because I want to ask you about this.
Yeah.
And what I meant is it's not just about getting what you want. There's so much
Yeah.
more, right? But
Of
you're right.
course.
There is an element of like bringing our intention into the things that we desire and bring those forth into our lives. But I
Yeah.
like that you bring this up, because where's the line between sort of trying to control and manipulate reality in a way that isn't aligned with natural law, and then playing with this idea of bringing desire into manifest form in
Yeah.
an intentional way?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things to think about there. So, one of the things that I tried to remind students about, even when just dealing with regular transits, like, you know, we have so much astrological information available at our fingertips now. There's a lot to take in. And it's this transit and then the next transit and then the next transit. And and it's like trying to help them figure out, like, does this really matter for me, this particular one, And the thing is, not all of them will, and it depends a lot on your birth chart. Your birth chart, in my view, and it's something of a it assumes some model of reincarnation. I mean, I just can't imagine. And I don't pretend to know how in the hell that works, but I just feel that, um, for instance, like how in the world would you ever completely grasp astrology without multiple lifetimes of study? It's like, it's hard to even imagine. There's so much. Um, but one way that I think about the birth chart is that it's a contract. It's a contract between you and the divine powers, you and the universe, however you want to frame that, of like, this is what I'm coming here to experience this time around, essentially. Like I'm, this is my soul's desire for this incarnation, essentially, right? And, if you and I go into business together and we have a contract to do certain things and something comes up that's not in that contract, then we need to have a discussion about like, hey, this do we both want to do this thing? And maybe we can add an addendum to the contract, something. But the point is, if it's not in the contract, then it's outside of the agreed upon, and so basically what I'm saying is, if, let's say, for instance, somebody wants to be famous, and God bless you, because I'm not so sure I really want to sign up for that sometimes. It's a lot, but let's just say they do. Does the chart indicate that to begin with? Do they have like their sun is often has to do with solar figure, public figures and stuff. Is their sun located in a way that would indicate that? If not, like maybe you would be better off focusing your energy on something that's a little more in line with the original contract, or you can try to modify the contract, and then what would that look like? Um, that it's interesting because one of the things that I used to talk to people about is that because eclipses have this nature of like inverting the light, like the solar light is darkened or the moon is reddened, or the nodes being like these having to do with fate and karma and whatever. I used to think of them as like portals where maybe we could, renegotiate the terms of different contractual things, and that um, it might be worth thinking about if we were to do that, what to give ourselves a little bit of room from feeling hemmed in by the life we've created. And so that's one thing to think about. Like, does this even align with the birth chart? Number one. And then number two, for me, I mean, I'm a South Node in Libra, so I'm pretty black and white about this. But if I'm doing something that is going to be helpful for me and my family and my friends and my community, there's really no worries because I'm trying to do something helpful. That's white magic, for lack of a better term. If I'm doing something that violates someone else's rights or consent, or is outright wanting to, like, let's just say, for instance, that and this is a fine line, right? Because if you think about it, like, let's say I do a spell that I want to be number one in some like some ego goal of being number one in some field of endeavor or whatever. So you've got to defeat whoever's number one now, right? And so is where I mean, if it's a fair contest, then maybe that's kind of gray. It's certainly not purely white because somebody's going to lose.
Right.
So it's really complex when you stop to think about it. But for me, being very careful about anything that has like negative outcomes for anyone. Like, I just don't like, I'm like, if there's any question in my mind that it's not just totally like for everyone's good. And you might even build that into, like, I know a lot of people when they're doing spell work or whatever, in the highest good for all concerned, like add that on at the end, right?
I always do that. I always do that because, like you said, we think we know what, and it seems like it would be good for everyone, but we don't actually know because we don't know everyone's path
Yeah.
and plan for life and all that. So I always add that. It's
Yeah.
just, either this or something better, or in the highest and best for all. And then I let it go, because maybe
Yeah.
the thing I think I want is not the thing that's actually going to give me what my soul actually wants to
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a fine dance. In the beginning, you mentioned that the Hermetic arts include astrology, magic, and alchemy.
Yes.
What's the difference between those three things?
Yeah. So in the Emerald Tablet, which is it's from the Persian Golden Age, it's the Arabic stream of astrology and magic. It's a famous document. It's a very short document that's sort of cryptic, but it really, what it does is it recapitulates the process of creation in an alchemical formula. At the end, he says, "Herein I have laid out the operation of the sun." I say he because it's supposed to be Hermes who's saying this, right? And he also says, this is part of the three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe. So he's saying there's three parts to the wisdom of the whole universe, and this is the operation of the sun. So alchemy being the operation of the sun, astrology being the operation of the stars, and theurgy, magic, being the operation of the moon.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah, and alchemy is a purification. It's like you notice how, like at the beginning of spiritual rituals, they'll like burn incense, or it's a cleansing, it's a purifying, and so um, that's really what alchemy is about. It's about breaking apart something into its primary constituents, purifying them, and then putting it back together.
Wow, that's so interesting. It's so interesting. Because I was thinking about the process of transformation that so many of us have gone through, that we go through, that humanity's going through, how
Yeah.
it feels like this breakdown, total break apart, right?
Yep.
And then there's that purifying process where we're getting in alignment with who we really are. We're getting in alignment with our soul contract or our natal promise or whatever. And
Yes.
then coming back. And it's like Venus's journey or Inanna's journey into the underworld.
Hmm.
It's that same archetypal
Yes.
process of transformation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so maybe you did that on a different level. Like maybe it wasn't, oh, I'm going to go study alchemy, or, because I also didn't go, oh, I'm going to go study alchemy, or I didn't even know I was going to be drawn towards astrology, but it was in that breaking apart, purification, and the purification process is when astrology came into my life, really. And
Hmm.
then,
Yeah.
so maybe we do go through it naturally.
Definitely, without a doubt. Definitely, without a doubt. I didn't know what I was doing the first. I just knew I was looking for magic, and in the process, I got purified. Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
went.
And think of how many people come to astrology in that process of like their life has just totally fallen apart. Like they're going through a very challenging period of life.
Yeah.
And then it comes in as this language that then, becomes a North Star and leads
Yeah.
them out
Yeah.
of that darkness. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and yeah, you have to approach the individual and figure out like where they are in their process. Obviously, that's why I don't really have a formal curriculum. Like anybody that wants to study with me, I custom make the process brand new for each and every person, because every person is unique. They may have already been through, they may not have, and so if they haven't, I probably want to look at, what can we do to make sure that they're not going to get like overloaded, because, this sacred knowledge can be, it's a lot, and it can overload your system, and it can be like, it's kind of like if you've ever been through a psychedelic experience, like a ritual where, I don't know, a lot of people take ayahuasca these days. I've never taken that, but if you, afterwards, you need to be cognizant of like having someone to help tend to your psychic state after that kind of intense experience. That's sort of what I'm talking about. It's like my job is not simply as a teacher to cram their head full of knowledge, right? It's to be a caretaker of their being, and to kind of figure out like which one of these three do they actually need more? Do they really need to start with astrology right now, or could they use some alchemy?
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. I
And
love.
so, yeah, it's kind of like that. And yeah, with the magic, to go back to the psychedelic metaphor, right? We know that if you're going to experience a psychedelic, state of heightened consciousness, the things that determine the qualitative experience are the set and the setting. So it's the mindset that you bring to the experience, and it's the setting within which that largely determine how that experience goes. And so, as magicians, again, if we come with something of maybe an egotistical drive or something, and it's like it's not been purified. Like there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a victory, like be number one. Like that's a healthy drive. But if it's not approached, and if it's sort of raw and it needs the rough edges knocked off of it, well, guess what? If you invoke magic for something that still needs the rough edges knocked off of it, the first thing you're going to experience is getting those rough edges knocked off. And you're going to think, oh my God, did I just like mess up? Why, this had the opposite effect of what I thought. But it's like, well, you asked for something that requires purification before you can experience the thing you asked for. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you're going to get it one way or the other.
Yes.
So, maybe it's gentler to go through the purification first, consciously and intentionally. That's all.
Yes.
And
I love
yeah,
that. Yes.
yeah,
Okay. So Gary, last week we had Rachel Lang on the podcast, and it was more of an introduction to how to begin working with astrological magic. And she brought in the moon. Like the moon is you just said the moon represents the magic. So it's a great starting point for people when they're wanting to start to learn.
yeah,
And we all know we can take it much further. So there's planetary hours and magical elections and fixed stars, which recently has really captivated me. The idea of the fixed stars, because of something that you said about the cross, that the four royal fixed stars specifically,
yeah.
they're holding the cross of matter in place with their positions. So can you talk about fixed stars, first of all, how they play into magic, and then I have a bazillion questions. So
Of course. So a couple things to remember about fixed stars is to contrast them to planets, and where the moon is a planet in astrology because there's 7 visible planets. We call them planets because planet means wandering star, right? And the moon is the most wandering of all of them. Like she moves 13 degrees every night, and if you're blessed with clear skies, you could see that really dramatically. So the word planet means wandering star, and that's specifically meant to contrast against the fixed stars of the constellations that have a more fixed and therefore eternal quality, right? And in Neoplatonic philosophy, like for instance, Plato in Timaeus, he talks about contrasting the motion of the planets with the stars. He calls one the circle of the same, and the other is the circle of the other. And in philosophy, sameness and or being is another word they use. It's like this is closer to divine energy, and otherness would be becoming, what they talk about becoming. So as mortal beings, we're in the process of becoming, but as divinity, they're in the process of being, right? So there's a contrast there. And so the stars, because they revolve around the heavens once per day, all at relatively the same speed, there's this quality of beingness to them that is not as much about becoming like the orbits of the planets are. Um, and and furthermore, if in the Ptolemaic cosmos, the planets are in this series of spheres that surround the Earth, and sort of, and in some really extreme cases, they were seen as like jailers, even. But even in the less deterministic view, they are sort of administrators of fate, if you will, the planets. Okay. but the stars exist in a sphere higher than that. And so the energy of fixed stars is almost like it's above and beyond these spheres of fate that we associate with the planets. And so there's a transcendent quality to them that is and so they were associated with eminence, for instance, like being raised up to heights in the social hierarchy. Um, at the same time, because this is such a high energy, right? If you slip and fall from a great height, it's gonna hurt a little bit more, and so they had this term astrolobitos. You can be starstruck. You can be sort of mad with the sort of Dionysian passion of this starry energy, but you can get carried away with that too, like in these, and get brought back down. And so these are very powerful beings. I mean, when you think about stars and what they are like our sun. But in fact, most of them are more intense than our sun is a pretty average star. And many of these stars, like Aldebaran, for instance, is a red giant. It's like huge, you know, and um, and so if you think of them as like these beings, and you know, we really are literally stardust. Like the heavier elements in our bodies, carbon and so on, is all formed in the last stages of a star compressing and then spewing the seeds of life across the universe. So they are really like the creative engines of the universe, and so this is a lot of power to plug into. And you know, I mean, we can use different examples, but when you begin to look at people like, for instance, Donald Trump, he has a lot of these fixed stars in his chart. And if you think about like this idea of standing outside of fate, like this guy's been through so many things. They tried to cancel him. They tried to, throw him in jail. They tried to assassinate him, and he's still here. It's like, love him or hate him, you got to admit that's pretty freaking remarkable.
It's funny because it's funny you bring that up, because this last summer when we had something was conjunct Algol. What was it? The North Node conjunct Algol?
It might have been. Yeah.
It was something.
No.
It was something. Algol was like front and center because it was
Jupiter
conjunct.
was there. Yeah.
Yeah, something that was happening, and that was the right when that assassination attempt.
Oh, that's
happened.
right. Yeah.
And
I was in
remember
Europe when that happened. It was crazy seeing it in a bar in Europe. I was like,
right,
what the heck?
right, exactly. So, but what it made me start thinking is because you astrologers always talk about how the slower moving planets are even more potent. We feel their slow churn of transformation even more potently. So then I was like, whoa, but the fixed stars, they're even slower. They're really slow. So do we feel them even more than a Pluto or
way more. Yeah.
which is amazing, because I don't feel like we talk about that very much,
Right.
because it's really only when the fixed star is conjunct something, right? It's not when it's making any sort of angles, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have a fixed star on an angle, like for instance, he has Mars conjunct Regulus on his ascendant. He referring back to the orange one. Sorry if that's a trigger for people, but I'm neither pro, no, I've never voted for or against the man. So, but it's just an example. But he has Mars conjunct Regulus on the ascendant, and then he has Algol on the midheaven, but there's no planet there, but it's his midheaven, and it's this very intense energy. By the way, Algol is probably one of the most powerful stars, and it is the Zeus himself carried the image of Algol on his aegis, Zeus and Athena both. Athena, his daughter, right? So this is a very, very powerful protective image.
Would you say, as far as astrological magic goes, then, that approaching them and creating ritual or ceremony with their energy is even more like advanced? Like it wouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I first started out in astrological magic, there were older, more experienced magicians who warned me, like, you don't know what you're messing with, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of took it with a grain of salt at the time because I'm an Aries and I'm going to do what I want, you know. But, but I get it now, you know, like if you aren't careful, like think of it this way, like nothing in the universe is free. Everything, like nothing is created or destroyed. Like there's no such you know, the concept of conservation of energy. So if you're going to receive some kind of energy, you're going to be giving something as well. And like, for instance, algol, I used to never work with algol, but I was out watching the Perseid meteor shower. And it just occurred to me, like, wow, these meteors are radiating from this constellation Perseus, which is where Algol is, right? Perseus, the hero, is holding the head of Algol. And at that moment, when I had that realization, she spoke to me and she invited me to work with her. And I was like, whoa, I'm very honored, but can I ask a few questions before I say yes or no? Like, you know, like, what am I getting myself into here, you know? And I asked her, like, is it okay, for instance, to make money if I'm going to be doing this, you know? And she told me, oh, yeah, like, if you increase my cult of worship, if you bring more devotional energy my way, then you can absolutely make a profit in the process of that. That's not a problem, she told me. And I was like, okay.
Why does she need that or want that?
Well, again, you know, the way that Krishna put it in the Bhagavad Gita is that it's just an energy flow. Like they're bringing the world into existence, and us giving the devotional energy back keeps the energy flowing, so that the world can keep being recreated. Like that idea that said that the sun rising creates the world anew. Well, it's not just free. It's not just like me being there devotionally witnessing that was my part of feeding the energy back into a creative loop.
Wow. It
Yeah.
also could be that the truth of their story, their
Yes.
archetypal story needs to be told as well. Because I know with Algol specifically, there's so much misunderstanding, right? The demon star and that, you know, there's like all these things cast on her that probably she's like, this is a total misunderstanding and misinterpretation. And as long as that story remains in place, there will continue to be tumultuousness around these topics. And if we can bring truth and light to these actual stories,
I get what you're
then
saying. To be clear, she's never tasked me with that. Uh,
it's really just been
well,
about like devotion to Algol. But even in the devotion to Algol, Gary, her the even in the inner circle, we've been having discussions about what does Algol really represent,
yeah.
and especially at this point in time with the feminine essence, and like what is she not? So even just by bringing awareness to her presence, those conversations are already happening, whether or
Yeah.
not it was explicit, right? To do it
Exactly.
that.
That's what I'm saying. Like I think that's gonna happen. Like I think she just wants me to bring attention, and that she'll take care of those things
Yes.
happening. Yeah. And it's interesting because you know, each one of these stars is associated. So there's this idea. So we've talked about the philosophy of the primary motion of being more like being than becoming, and we've talked about the Ptolemaic cosmos being higher and more transcendent. The other thing that when we work with these stars, because they're higher, there's a need for this chain of correspondences that we build, sort of a ladder, of an energetic ladder to connect with them. And so in the original transmission of these 15 Bohemian stars that we use in Hermetic magic, um, each one was given a stone, a plant, and a symbol, and also a sigil. And so if you think about it like the mineral kingdom, like it's like this, you know, it's this earthy, energy. And then the plant kingdom is a little bit, and then an animal that's associated with it. And then a sigil would be like more mental plane. So you're building these layers of correspondence. That's like this ladder of energetic rod that you can sort of communicate through, right? And one of the other ways to do that is that each one of these stars was also said to correlate to a pair of planets. And with Algol, for instance, the planets that she correlates to are Jupiter and Saturn. And so, as I said, like, Jupiter himself wore the shield of Algol on his shield, on his aegis, right? But it's also Saturn, and Saturn is a very difficult taskmaster, And so I think that's where the kind of edgy energy, but it's important to remember she's like Jupiter and Saturn. She really does have a sweet, loving side, but I think the sort of other quality that gets focused on like way, way, way more. And so I'm with you 100% that it would be great for people to understand her better. Really, but to me, like the only way, well, not the only way, but the main way to do that is to get to know her yourself, you know?
This is what I love that you're illustrating, Gary, because at the end of the day, we can memorize spells, we can emulate rituals, we can like do things according to the book. But at the end of the day, it is that communion, that individual communion with the animating forces of life. And so the fact that you're saying, you're walking in the forest and Algol's talking to you. I mean, I know this is sincere. This is real. And for a lot of people that might be like, what? Like, is he going crazy? Right.
Look, I tend more towards the clairs. They talk about the spiritual gifts, the clairs. I tend more towards clairaudience than most, I think. Most people have one of those that stands out, and I'm a hearing kind of I'm an auditory
Me
person.
too.
Other people might feel things. There's different ways. I'm not saying she's going to talk to everybody like that. Probably not. But you can definitely form a relationship, that's unique to you.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's the thing, Yeah.
Gary, I promised that we would touch on deacons.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about how deacons play into
Yeah.
astrological magic practices?
Yeah. Yeah. So deacons are another topic that is interesting in the sense that they came from Egypt, right? So they are pre-horoscopic astrology. In other words, horoscopic astrology is like, the horoscope wheel with the, ascendant and the 12 houses and everything. The decans were a way of dividing the heavens, not by 12 signs, but by 10-degree segments of so there's 36 of them, right? And there were certain gods that were assigned to each decan, and certain images and so forth. And because they are prior to, in fact, some of the Hermetica, which is a group of Hermetic texts, that some of the earliest Hermetica are devoted like to the decans. And so I think of it like if you ever saw The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, um, Aslan versus the Ice Queen, right? And the Ice Queen's trying to, she tricks the one boy, I think his name was Edward. She tricks him into betraying his friends, and then she's got control over his soul now because of that. Like that's basically how evil works. And Aslan's like, yeah, according to the, laws, whatever, you have a right to that. But according to the deep magic, if someone is willing to sacrifice for him, like that law, that the deep magic supersedes that law. And so Aslan is, I think most people see that as a clear allegory for Christ, who sacrifices. But this idea of like the deep magic of this deeper thing that came before the horoscopic stuff. I feel like that's applicable to the Decans. And so it's similar to fixed stars in that it's maybe a way to, if we get constricted, like, yeah, like the birth chart and really just human nature, we get stuck. We stop growing. And so the Decans and the fixed stars are really great catalysts to like get the process going again, and get us unstuck. And because they exist outside of these arbiters of fate that the planets represent, Um, and one of my favorite ways to work with the Decans is through the minor arcana of the tarot, right? Because in the Golden Dawn system, there are 36 decans, and so if you divide up the cards and you leave the aces out because the aces are special, you get the 2, 3, and 4 will be the decan of the cardinal sign of an element. Okay, so the cardinal sign will represent the 2, 3, and 4. The fixed sign will represent the 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, and then the 8, 9, and 10 will be the mutable sign of that element, right? So like, for instance, 2 of Wands is the first decan of Aries, right? 3 of Wands is the second decan of Aries, and so forth, okay? And so these cards can become talismans then, in a way, and like, here's this this story. This will just give you an inkling of like the possibilities. So when Mars was finishing up his sojourn so in this system, by the way, the first decan and the last decan belong to Mars. Mars rules the first decan of Aries and the last decan. And McGregor Mathers, who's the author of the Golden Dawn material, most of it, he says that it's because there's this tremendous energy that's required to overcome the cold of winter, Okay. But when Mars was in the last decan of Pisces, and so the mutable is the 8, 9, and 10 of that suit, right? So that's the 10 of Cups. One of the most beautiful, beneficent looking card. I mean, there's this rainbow above this happy couple and the child's dancing. I mean, it's gorgeous, right? And so I was playing around with AI art at the time, and I was playing around with blockchain technology. And so what I did is I created this image of that, and then I uploaded it to the blockchain as an NFT. Really, it was kind of an experiment. Like, do these decans work? I was pretty sure they did, but like, you need to experience it to really know. And like, B, can NFTs be talismans? And so I did this 10 of Cups talisman. And at the time I was living in North Carolina, and my wife and I had been renting there for about 6 years. We've been saving our money. She got a place for us to stay through work that was like cheap. And so we were just saving money. And eventually we wanted to buy cash so that we could like, be semi-retire or whatever, well, when the pandemic hit, inflation went crazy, and all of a sudden people could live anywhere they want and work, from remote. So of course everybody wanted to be in Asheville. And so the prices went through the roof. So we were priced out of the market there. We had a fixed price. Like, this is how much money we actually have. If we want to buy cash, like, we cannot. So I started looking up and down the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I ended up coming back to Virginia, where I'm from. And we found a place, and we had been living there about 2 weeks. And I live like only about a half a mile from the New River. So there's a fog that comes up from the river most mornings. So it was foggy out, and I saw the sun coming up, and my office faces northeast, and saw the sun coming up, and the way the sun was coming through the fog caught my attention. I was like, "Ooh, that looks magical." I'm going outside, So I go up there, and I had heard about this phenomenon before, but, because I've published, my astrophotography online for many years, and I've seen what other people do. And there's this phenomenon, it's called a Brock inspector. And it's where the sun shines into the fog and like throws your shadow into the fog. And there's like this huge shadow with a rainbow around it. And when I got up to the top of the hill, I saw this huge rain, like a fog bow, essentially. I didn't see the shadow thing yet, but I thought something in my mind said, this thing that I'm seeing, this fog bow, is related to that other thing that I've seen in pictures. And something in my mind was like, this thing that it's happening. And I started to get excited. And then this other thing in my mind is like these angels were literally on one shoulder and the other. And this other thing's like, what's the chances of that? It was like, that's crazy. That's not happening. And then the other part kind of spoke back and said, but what if it is? And I was like, I ran down to the house and got my camera. And sure enough, I witnessed this phenomenon happening. And so now I live in a place. I did this talisman for this card that's literally this rainbow over a house. And I wasn't even trying to get that. I didn't have like this image, even though I was actually in the process of looking for a home. It didn't occur to me that outcome was what I was trying to achieve. I was just doing my art, but I ended up with living in a place where, and I've seen like probably in the order of dozens of these phenomena now. This place is like perfectly aligned where you get these fog bows, and then there's this rainbow around my shadow. It's like it's like, and I can't help but think like that doing that decan talisman for the 10 of cups like had something to do with me winding up here in this place that just magically creates this natural phenomenon, like they've got to be related. I can't think otherwise.
That's amazing. Amazing. I love that story. Did the NFT work?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure it did. Like,
I see.
See what I'm saying? Like, it's pretty unmistakable.
in a bigger way. In a bigger
way. Yeah. Then I had even imagined, like, 10 of cups, like, the standard interpretations is just like emotional fulfillment and whatever.
Yeah.
And I've had that too. Like literally when I was in Spain, I got called over there by a woman who was a student of a student. Like I didn't even know her. I didn't know, like I knew that my student was bilingual and I knew that she was teaching Spanish speaking people, but I had no idea the breadth of that. And one of her students contacted me and said, hey, it's important that you know how important you are. I get choked up even just thinking about it. She invited me over to Spain and I traveled with her company on the Camino Santiago. And it was so like, the whole experience was just so emotionally fulfilling. It was literally like those 10 cups overflowing. I was just like, it felt so good to know that this art takes care of itself. Like if you pass it on to people who are also good caretakers, they pass it on. And to see it before my eyes, like transcending, crossing oceans and language barriers and being alive and changing people's lives and giving them wonderful experiences, like it's a dream come true.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you have just taken us on a journey, though, a journey that, like I said in the beginning, helps us feel instead of telling what astrological magic is all about and what it can bring into our lives, and the continual wonder, the continual awe, the continual like overflowing of experience and stories to tell. And that is our hope for all of you in this exploration of astrological magic, that whether you start with alchemy or you start with magic or you start with astrology or you dabble in all of it, that it does help to bring that childlike wonder back into your life on a very consistent basis. So Gary, thank you for everything that you shared with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for continuing to do your own practice and have your own experiences, because then you can share those with us and encourage others to have their own experiences.
Yes.
But we learn so much from each other's stories.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And
thank you for the opportunity.
for any of you wanting to go deeper, we have several of Gary's astrological magic classes as part of Magic Month. So you can go to astrologyhub.com/magic and explore the different classes we have with Gary. One on the Decans and the Minor Arcana, which he just started talking about. One that begins to introduce you to fixed stars. One that will get you oriented around planetary hours and magical elections. But we've named Gary's classes as intermediate, because they're like, once you have some of the foundations down, they're a great next step in your astrological magic journey. Jen's Arts are when you're ready to go even deeper and like create your own labs and like do like all kinds of amazing things. So this is a great, Gary's a very accessible teacher. He makes it really tangible, really real. You're a beautiful teacher. I love the way that you teach.
Earth sign, moon. I like to make things practical. Yeah.
Yes, it is practical. So check those classes out. Be thinking about your best astrologically themed costume.
Yeah.
Put it together. Take a picture of yourself. I mean, is that fun? I love it. And it's so endless. I mean, really, I started thinking like, what would astrologically themed costumes look like? And it's just like, oh my God,
sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. We said it at the same time. But yes, and take pictures of yourself, send it in. Same link, astrologyhub.com/magic. We'll put those links in the show notes. If you're driving and you can't write them down, don't worry. But Gary, just thank you again so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure.
It's wonderful to be here with you again. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, for making astrology a part of your life, for being a part of our community. We are so grateful for you. We'll catch you on the next episode. We'll be going even deeper into astrological magic with Jen's Art next week. All right. Take care, everybody.